Thank you for listening to the Advertising Podcast. I'm Skip Wilson here with Erin Christopher. She has brought to us a fantastic ad that is one that almost guaranteed, if you were a media consuming individual of 10 years ago, you will probably remember. Fantastic creative, but horrible strategy. The strategy is so bad that it definitely contributed to a company that's no longer with us anymore. So with that, take it away.
Breaking down advertisements, improving on them, redefining ad space. This is the Advertising Podcast.
Erin, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I am Erin Christopher. I am a demand generation, what do you want to call it? Expert, maybe? Intermediate expert? We'll go with expert today for the purpose of this podcast. And I have been in marketing for, let's say over 20 years. I started in the big ad agencies working in traditional media and then saw digital was the wave of the future. So I hopped on the digital train and ultimately did everything that you could in digital marketing, led digital marketing teams, and then really kind of came back and honed into demand generation in the true Chris Walker sense of the term. So for those of you who are Walker aficionados, you'll know what I mean by demand generation. If not, look them up, check them out. And we really focus on not just capturing demand, but creating demand as well. Now, this today, what we're going to talk about is a little bit different. I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about my traditional media roots and how we looked at a company that took a really big bet in traditional media and kind of flopped in the digital media space, and just kind of wanted to talk about how they could have done it better.
Awesome. Yeah, no, let's dive right into it, because there's nothing worse than taking like a major bet and it not paying off at all.
Yeah.
So
awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and play a commercial for you. And let me go ahead. Would you prefer that I share my screen or?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and play a commercial for you. Hopefully I am sharing my screen with you.
You are.
And we'll go into slideshow mode.
Yeah.
So that, let's do it on the right page so that we can see this.
Perfect.
So hopefully you haven't talked about this campaign before.
No.
But this is how Kmart shipped the bed. So about 9 years ago, Kmart really went big with this great commercial. And then I think they got scared, and they were so used to relying on traditional media that their first reaction was to pull it. And then they realized how well it did and tried to embrace it, but really only tried to embrace it in the big media space. So let me show this for anyone who hasn't seen it. It is about 9 years old, and 4.4 million views back then was a lot.
Yeah.
Ship my pants? Right here? Ship my pants? You're kidding.
You can ship your pants right here.
You hear that? I can ship my pants for free.
Wow, I just may ship my pants.
Yeah, ship your pants. Billy, you can ship your pants too.
I can't wait to ship my pants, Dad.
I just shipped my pants, and it's very convenient.
Very convenient.
I just shipped my drawers.
I just shipped my nightie.
I just shipped my bed.
If you can't find what you're looking for in store, we'll find it at Kmart.com right now and ship it to you for free.
So had you seen that before?
Yeah, I remember that commercial actually. What's funny is that that's the kind of commercial that is great, because you have people making fun of it, like at work the next day, like in a positive way, being like, I just shipped my so-and-so, because, it was a part of a big company. We were shipping packages and stuff all the time at that point. And, be like, oh, did you ship that proposal? And it'd be like, oh yeah, I shipped, it
was a great campaign, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
It was on air for maybe a week. Then Kmart pulled it. It got its first 4.2 million views in the first week that it aired. And since then, 9 years later, we're only at 4.4 million. So I think it's really interesting when you look at a campaign of this scale, and that was so groundbreaking. But because they reacted with fear, right? They pulled it. They were so worried about their conservative customers that they didn't embrace this campaign. They didn't build it out on any other channel. I mean, they built it out in radio, which is funny, but not quite as funny visually, because I think the juxtaposition of children and older people and just that all the different diversity of faces you see
Right.
makes a big impact. But it's something they could have done really well digitally. But they didn't do that because Kmart was a traditional company working with a traditional agency. And so they did run one more that I thought was great, but nobody actually heard. You want me to play that one for you?
Yeah, let's take a look at it.
Okay.
Ugh, I hate these big ass prices.
Sounds like you could use some big ass savings.
I'd love some big ass savings.
Kmart Shop Your Way members save 30 cents a gallon.
30 cents a gallon? That's a big ass discount.
Big ass discount.
A really big ass discount.
Really big ass discount.
Honey, this solves your big ass problem.
Totally solves my big ass problem.
Dad, look at that big ass truck.
Big ass man.
Hello, big ass man.
Shop Your Way members get big gas savings. Save 30 cents a gallon when you spend $50 or more at Kmart.
So pretty funny, but if you didn't have a Kmart that had a gas or had a gas station, that's not something you saw in your market, right? But Kmart really focused on these big bets with these commercials. They came out with another one that was for Christmas that was really trash. And then they gave up, right? And they listened to their agency and they went for their ideal customer profile. One more just for fun?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go one more. And I'm going to skip two because
I hate these big ass.
Sounds like
I had no idea that Kmart even had gas stations. I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't either. So one of the things that I thought that Kmart really bumbled, and I think this one I would even say might be on the edge of, let's just say, over stereotyping, was they abandoned their, language where they played with, traditional cuss words and decided to go here next.
Get it without credit. Shop online, pay in store.
So very different, right?
Yeah. So I have one of my big problems with that campaign is that's one where I don't know who the target audience is. It's like, if you're trying to get older people to get familiar with shopping online, then they're not going to even understand the concept of doing it like a boss, right? And if you're trying to appeal to young people, they already know how to shop online, so it's not impressive. So it's that has no target audience in my opinion. It's fun, it's humorous, but who's that for?
I think it's, rating adults 54 or plus. And you're looking at a more urban audience, right? Which is interesting because I used to live in Atlanta, Georgia. Kmart closed a long time ago, right? But they're still in more rural areas. So the irony of that campaign is it just didn't play right, right? It almost seemed to pander in a really weird way to what wasn't what I would consider their target audience.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to what I thought was a killer campaign, right? Because I thought it was epic. I thought it had the chance to save Kmart.
Right.
And it didn't. So what do you think? I feel like they banked on traditional media, and that was the biggest mistake that they made.
Yeah. For a company like Kmart to survive, for any sort of grocery type store or grocery retail store, adults 25-54 is like the key, right? And like for a company like Kmart, I think they and this is all assumptions, but my assumption is they probably were okay with like the 45 plus crowd like near their stores. I think where they were probably missing it was like the younger part of that demo. But which, yeah, traditional media, I think their messaging was great. It was a placement issue, like I think more than anything else. Like, but
So 9 years ago, I think one of the challenges was, challenge and opportunity. Had they promoted that on social, they were still dealing with very low cost per clicks. You could still advertise that pretty widespread.
That was back when Facebook had like a customer acquisition cost of like $5, $6.
Right. So it seemed like a miss to me not to embrace digital and not to even animate some banner ads that they could use or really go after that audience. And I think where they fumbled, to your point, was that if they're targeting a younger audience, they went into their Christmas special with the It's a Wonderful Life characters, right? So you've got the ghosts, you've got, Tiny Tim, they're talking about their trousers. Again, trying to appeal to the audience they felt they already had,
Right.
while somewhat abandoning where they needed to go. And I
Yeah.
think that that's something that's really important that people are looking at when they're thinking about marketing. Your message has to match your medium. And so many marketers come out there and they think they can run the same message across all media. My favorite was when I worked for BBDO and I did media buying for Dodge, Jeep, and Chrysler. And one of the things that we would get a media plan, and we would essentially buy very similar media buys across all of their products because it was rating adults 25-54.
Sure.
Right? There was no limiter on that audience. So the Dodge Caravan was getting the same ad buy as the Dodge Neon, where you had very different creative, very different customers. And I think that that's changing now. I think people have gotten a lot smarter about playing to the channel that they're in, but it's not just putting a cooking commercial on a cooking show and making it a recipe they can do quickly. It's about thinking about the audience and the age group and what's going to appeal to that audience. And so I think that's the biggest miss here from Kmart's standpoint, was they really wanted to make a splash, shock people. They wanted to bring in a new audience, but I think they got scared and they relied on old tactics to try to win in a new era.
And what a way to fumble at they put all that money into like the production and all that to create a commercial just to then pull it. I mean, do you know why would they pull it? Because was there backlash or was it just fear of backlash?
I think it was fear of backlash, right? I think there are definitely, you can go and find articles where they got chastised. There are people on the internet, but they're going to criticize you for anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And in the old world, they used to say any press is good press, right? So how did that change from the Don Draper era? Yet they still were investing in Don Draper era tactics, right? If you think about it. And I think that the problem with that is that it didn't translate in print, right? That's not going to be funny in print. You have to hear it. So what are those auditory media that they should have been exploring because of that piece? I think radio was good, but was, like I said, slightly less impactful because you couldn't marry the faces with faces.
And with that type of mass media buy, like radio is great as a callback to the TV commercial. Like, if you've seen it's a frequency builder, right? Like you saw the TV commercial last night. So now you hear the radio commercial this morning and it's funny. It's funny because you saw it last night. You're exactly right. Where audio only with that campaign doesn't work as well. Plus puns in general, I don't think work great in audio because it's, people are always distracted. You're listening to radio while you're driving or while you're doing something else, and then you might actually think that they said the word because you're not seeing it spelled out, right? So
I think that's the risk, right? And then
that's
for sure. So I don't know if they may have thought, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this, it's going to go viral, we don't need a media budget. They may not have had a media budget. They may have sunk it all into the production. I mean, it was a time when Kmart was strapped.
Sure.
Right? So I don't know why they pulled the ad. I haven't been able to find anything in the research.
Right.
But it's an ad that still resonates with people today. And I saw when I was Googling it, an article from May of 2022 where people are still writing about this ad. It's still relevant. It's still a great case study. Unfortunately, a case study in
How not to do
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, when you've got a tagline like that, you got to go all in. I mean, that's I was actually just listening to the masterclass from the people that did the Got Milk commercial,
Mhm.
and how it was it started off with a series of funny commercials. The guy eating a sandwich, and the radio calls, and he's, and he can't talk because he didn't have milk, which I had completely forgotten about that commercial until I saw it. But what made the difference between that campaign and the Kmart campaign is they really owned Got Milk. T-shirts made, distributed everywhere, the billboards, radio, TV. Now, maybe it was a budget issue, but because like you said, Kmart may just not have had the cash. But then if you don't have the cash, TV is like got to be one of the worst mediums to go all in on, right? Because that's like the most expensive of all mediums. So, like,
Yeah.
if you don't have the cash, start off with Facebook, start off with YouTube.
Yeah.
Especially then.
But it's big media agency tactics, right? And I think that that's what's changed a lot when you look at marketing as a whole. People aren't using the I mean, there are some brands that are still using big ad agencies, right? They're still around, but I think that part of the reason the media conglomerate or the conglomerates, OMD and all of those guys started, eating everything up was because they had to create these economies of scale, because people really are looking for niche agencies as they are choosing partners. Right. And especially in an economy like this, people are looking for freelancers. They're looking for less expensive alternatives and to get them through, right? Versus making these big bets. And I think that there was a huge opportunity for Kmart here, if they were brave enough to embrace new media. And I think that's the lesson here, right? This was 9 years ago. So these tactics we use today and feel like they're, commonplace, were risky back then.
Sure.
But digital's changing so fast that it's going to keep going, right? Lightning speed. And I think the earlier you can become an adopter, the better you can penetrate these channels as you, move your business forward, right? And embracing that growth. I mean, I watch Canva using advertising on, I don't know if it's one of the cable freebie stations, right? On my Roku. And it is embracing that media, right? I can with Canva. Oh, wow. Now I just introduced this, freelancer tool to anybody who wants to make a t-shirt for their soccer team or their, make a poster for their Girl Scout troop, right? And it's about being willing to embrace these new media early on. That's going to be so crucial to some of these big brands being able to survive.
Yeah, for sure. Because let's pretend that Kmart was still a thing and Kmart was launching that campaign today. Now it's like, to your point, they wouldn't be afraid to do a Facebook, Instagram, YouTube pre-roll campaign. They would absolutely do that. The difference is that it's going to cost 30 times what it would have cost 9 years ago to have done that campaign.
Yeah.
It would the CPMs are way higher, the cost per click is way higher. So it's like, even being willing to take risks, not just creative risks, because obviously somebody was willing to take a creative risk, but being willing to take a creative risk and then a media mix or a media risk. You got to do both. And like you said, have your media buy match the messaging. And that's critical. I was actually just talking to a local business, a local car dealer, about Pinterest, and he was like, "Who's on Pinterest? Nobody's on Pinterest." It was for a van. It was for Honda Odysseys, and I was like, "Well, I mean, that's your classic small business owner, and small business owners make this type of mistake all the time, where they think, oh, I don't use that, so therefore nobody uses it." But who drives vans? Moms. And who's on Pinterest? moms. So it's like that's the perfect mix. That's the perfect overlay.
Yeah, and I would say I would take that even further to say that when I am putting something online, I want to make sure that it's in the highest ranking position in organic search as well. So if I'm looking for images, Pinterest does a lot of work to make sure that it's SEO optimized. So it's not just about, you're not going to get yourself to rank. But if you can get yourself to rank on Pinterest because Pinterest is doing that extra work for you, then that's what you should be doing. It's not just about the audience. You've got to think about the platform as well and how that's going to help you. And do you create a tour of that product on YouTube and put it on YouTube? Another way to get on that first page of Google that's non-traditional, that's a lot easier than trying to rank organically. And I think that that's some of the things that people need to think about as they are building out these campaigns. So if we go back and we think about Kmart, right? They could have built a blog on what we learned.
Yeah.
They could have, I mean, we've talked about, doing different ads, going into Facebook placements. But there's a lot of ways that they could have chopped up those pieces, run them as bookends. Think about even using traditional media a little bit differently and see what you can do. 15-second ad spots are a lot less than 30-second ad spots. Right? And are you picking the right commercials? Are you going on Vice or are you trying to be on ABC? Right? So if you're doing a cable buy, you're going to be spending a lot less and you can customize your audience to those that really were cool with the fact that you were cussing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it came down to.
Some platforms. And yeah, exactly right. And in today's world with Hulu and with OTT in general, so like the streaming platforms like you were talking about with Canva and stuff, yeah, you can do super deep segmentation, which is helpful. But yeah, even things like they should have just done stuff like, and I don't think they did this, but like if you go into the stores, there should have been buttons that said I shipped myself, that like they give it, there's like little things like that could have been a really great campaign if they had owned it. And
they should have put it on the outside of their packaging, right?
Yeah.
Create custom packaging that said, I shipped my blank, right? Merchandising was a great way to play on that, right? I bought a Piggly Wiggly hat for my husband the other day. We were driving through Alabama and I was like, oh my God, I have to have a Piggly Wiggly hat. And it's just an inside joke in our family, but it's something where they are now able to create a revenue stream solely off of merchandising their brand.
Exactly. And you get paid to have someone wear your advertisement around, which is like phenomenal.
It's word of mouth, it's advocacy, it's a walking billboard. There's so much you can do if you're willing to think a little bit differently, right?
Exactly.
I'm trying to think of some of the brands, and it doesn't make sense to me that Kmart fell out of favor, right? I remember shopping there, especially when I got out of college. It was, what I needed.
Yeah.
And it was the price point I needed at the time.
Exactly.
But Walmart and Target are thriving, right? You saw the fall of your department stores. Who shops at Macy's anymore? That's not nice to say. I love Macy's, but I often wonder how they pay for that parade.
Yeah, it was actually, yeah, exactly. I've thought for years that someday that's going to be like the Amazon Prime like parade or something like that, which I'm sure it will be eventually. But yeah, I don't know how they pay for that.
Yeah,
90% of their media budget. That's.
I mean, I go to Macy's. Last time I went to Macy's, it was for my wedding registry, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably about the last time for me too.
Right. So I think that things are changing, and I think that it's about embracing the change is what's so important. And I think if you're going to jump off a waterfall, you better be willing to swim when you get to the bottom. And I feel like Kmart jumped off a waterfall and just kind of decided to tread water.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a shame, right? It really was an epic commercial. Now, I saw something the other day, I wish I'd saved it, that tried to play on it a little bit, that same kind of idea about using shipped and
Sure.
right. So I think people are trying to brave it, but I think it's a different world today, right? We wear t-shirts that say, I run on, coffee, chaos, and cuss words. You see unicorns dabbing with foul statements or, irreverent comments on coffee cups. And I can't tell you how much of that I've gifted, right? I am keeping all the people who quietly quit during COVID self-employed with all of the irreverent things that I buy. But irreverent is okay now. Irreverent was really on the bleeding edge 9 years ago.
Right.
So I think that that's the other thing that you have to be willing to embrace. And as a trailblazer, had they come in and even thought about, okay, let me merchandise the store in an irreverent way, right? Let me start bringing in irreverent socks and t-shirts and things that appeal to the same audience that enjoyed my commercial. So it's not even just a media strategy. It could be a product merchandising strategy. To your point of sale strategy. I think there's so many things that they missed the boat on. I would be interested to see what your watchers think when they come. So I hope that we can have a comment area and kind of ideate around how Kmart could have done it differently.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think so. The key takeaways I think from this are: one, have your messaging match your media, or the other way around too. I mean, the things need to go together. Your media placement needs to match your message, and then be okay with being okay with being offensive. I think is, not like an intentional or a bad way, but like, I don't know. The idea that everyone is your customer is not true of any business anyway. So like, if you make some people mad, that's fine. Like, that means that it's appealing to somebody probably. And there's plenty of examples of that. Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, etc. Take hard like political stances, and they both companies on either extreme have super loyal fans because of that. And so it's like, be okay with not appealing to everyone. And then what other key takeaways from if you are taking
the media, right? Embrace it, dive in, test. It's worth it, guys. It's going to pay off. I cannot tell you how many times I, rejected contracts when I was doing traditional media buys because they wanted to give me digital added value, right? That wasn't worth a dime at the time. And it, how wrong I was. I remember a buddy of mine who was 2 years younger than me, my best friend's little brother, said, you should start a website just so people can advertise. They'll pay you a penny per ad. I mean, I just should have listened back then, right? Because it is the future, guys. It's going to come, and it's going to come with a vengeance. And so be willing to try. And I'm not saying put your whole budget there, but set aside 5-10%. I like 20% for testing in my budget. And so I always try to have 20% of my budget's high risk. 20% of my budget is I don't want to lose money. And the 60% in the middle is moderate risk, right? Things that I have data on, things that, maybe I'm pushing a little bit further based on the data, but I have confidence in, right? But if you're not taking a risk, I think then you're going to go stale in marketing and advertising. And so you've got to be ready to jump off the waterfall.
Funny story on the added value being streaming. I was high in 2010. I was hired at what was then Clear Channel Radio to start what would be their digital department. And literally I was introduced at one time in front of a client, the guy that hired me, who goes, "Oh yeah, and here's Skip. He set it up our added value department."
Yeah.
But it was like a Freudian slip, but I was like, that's more accurate than I wish it was.
But here's the thing today. I'm telling you now, traditional media is becoming the added value. I interviewed for a job a handful of years ago. I was like, I'm going to go local. And I interviewed for a job with the TV station. Right. And it was insane how much digital they were selling and how little When did the Olympics become added value? Right.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's good
Yeah.
talking to a fellow media person that gets that, but it used to be prime, right?
Right.
So
That was
it's really changed a
the
lot.
thing. And all the other TV companies you'd give up when it's Olympics time. You'd be like, well, it's Olympics, so like, of course they went over with whoever the NBC affiliate is. Like, it's,
Yeah.
but now very different world today. Very different world today.
Well, and I think that comes to measurement, right? Like, I think the reason that has changed is I remember the way that we measured whether our campaigns were effective in media buying was low squad, right? Did we negotiate a better rate than the average advertiser for this spot?
Yep.
Not did our campaigns run, did they actually like deliver sales? But because we think we can see that in digital, and I said that the way I did, we think we can see that in digital.
Right.
We are now choosing to invest in digital. Now that's a whole nother conversation around attribution and data and how much we trust data versus, maybe putting too much trust in it. And I love data,
For
but
sure.
it's just very different. So I think a lot of people were like, oh, I can measure digital. I can see this person all the way through the funnel. I can see what's happening. That really has led people to digital. So as you see that evolve, right? Even in media, like what can be measured is what counts. And so if you see new media coming out that claims to be able to measure better, you better expect that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for listening to the Advertising Podcast, the podcast where we fix broken ads. Please remember that while marketing is an art, advertising is a science, and we at Draft Advertising Technology have the tools and tricks to help you treat it that way. For a bunch of early access to free tools, go to draftadtech.com. That's draftadtech.com. And of course, please like, subscribe, share, and if you leave us a review, just include your name or even the name of your company, and we'll mention you on air.